Hello and welcome to Africa Today. I am Esther Mokwariola. Stuck between abundant resources and effective resourcefulness, Africa has grown to become a region where poor leadership remains the bane of development. In a continent where some believe women are meant to be seen and not heard, their hard work at the home front and contributions to society, which has significant human development, even often goes unacknowledged. And so we ask, what are your thoughts on the role of women in nation building and sustainable development across Africa? You can join the conversation and share your thoughts with us on Twitter at TVC News NG. We take a report and Africa Today will continue. Welcome on board.
Speaker after speaker, this gathering lament the dwindling fortunes of women in elective offices and crave for a collaboration that will justify women's population strength.
The poor outing at the 2015 general elections make one to ponder on the problems hindering the success of eminent and credible women from attaining leadership positions in Nigeria. I contested against 8 men in the 2015 general election. So it is very, very, challenging.
When you have a woman in a list, it has to be seen as an element of participation to the power that can improve the quality of the political offer of a certain political party, and not merely a name on a list, because it's nice to have a name on the list.
The participation of women and men in all aspects of public life is a key principle of democracy. Women have the right to voice and participation in political processes that affect them, their families and societies.
To reverse the ugly trend, they advocate a change in the policies of government, political parties and others.
Political parties in Nigeria should adopt the Senegal model, where the deputy to a candidate in any elective position comes from the opposite sex. Independent National Electoral Commission should adopt the policy of deregistering any political party that fails to adhere with the gender policy.
Nigeria should encourage gender equality in sphere of life as a nation in order to demonstrate support for free and fair elections in Nigeria.
Rapporteurs will in the next 2 days take participants through wide-ranging topics, including prospects and challenges faced by young female entrants and PWDs in the electoral process.
Well, before we get into the discussion of the day, let's update you on some of the top news stories around Africa. Gabonese President Ali Bongo has been in hospital in Riyadh, Saudi Arabia, where the 59-year-old leader was scheduled to appear on Wednesday on a panel at the flagship Future Investment Initiative Forum in the Arab nation. The DRC's opposition parties have agreed to name a single unity candidate by mid-November to run against President Joseph Kabila's choice in December elections. Sudan has lifted a ban on agricultural imports from China, the latest sign of mending relations between Cairo and Khartoum. Now joining me on Skype to discuss what we have today, I have Dr. Ama Ogerima, convener, Live Abundantly Empowerment Initiative. And on phone, I'm having Folashade Oba, politician and gender rights advocate. Good to have you both on the program.
Thank you for having me.
So let's begin with you now, Dr. Ama Ogerima. This matter concerning women is always being discussed, especially when we have conferences where we have women coming out to say, oh yes, we need to be at the forefront and all of that. But in your own words, on your own analysis, what's your perception on how women have been engaged in nation building in Africa for some time now?
Well, the truth of the matter is that there is a disparity in the representation, of women and men in terms of nation building. And to really dissect that, you have to look at the gender roles that are attached to women or men. We tend to think of them in biological terms, but the reality, it is prescribed by the society we live in. So the society, the culture, the political setting will determine how well or how easy it is for one gender to access or be part of nation building. You know, the UN report states that in Africa, actually developing worlds, 53% of the women are relegated to jobs that are on the lower paying strata. That's if they even have access to those jobs. And it goes back to that gender issue. So until we reach a platform where we agree that all of us, male or female, have the right to perform and to have access to education to the fullest extent of the law, to the fullest extent of the society, we're going to have that disparity. And we need both men and women, girls and boys, who will eventually grow up to be women and men, to participate in what is going on. And so education becomes very important. Access to resources becomes very important. And then we need to break up those cultural biases against women.
And talking about cultural bias, we're yet to fully understand what really is behind the relegation of women and the background, because like you said, both women and men have a role to play in any given society, but the women still haven't been given that opportunity to stand equal to the men. So what would you say is responsible for women's relegation to the background?
It's religious and it's cultural. When you have a society that's heavily religious, or the culture states that women are inferior to men, or they lack the competitive nature or intelligence or the vigor that is needed to participate fully in the socioeconomic sphere, it affects the way women are viewed.
And, you know, surprising to say, even though right now we have Ethiopia celebrating its first female president, the country right now also has about 37% of women in its parliament, and not forgetting Rwanda, which tops the UN list of countries with the most women in parliament. Would you say Africa generally is rising to the occasion of allowing women to take the front seat, even though this is happening in East Africa? The western part of the country, of the continent rather, is yet to experience same.
Well, you've raised a very important point, because when you even look at South Africa, it's 43%. When you look at Cameroon, it's 20%. But in Nigeria, we're at 7%. And we know the story. In the Senate, how many women do we have? 7. The rest of them are men, 102 of them. When you look at the House of Representatives, only about 30% of those. There is this cultural bias against women going into politics. It is viewed as a man's world. It is viewed that women don't have the intellectual vigor, that the women can't excel with the pressure that is put on them, especially if they have to be mothers. And then, of course, there's that bias against women, that perhaps the women who are going into politics are divorcees, or they've come from failed marriages, so they can't really be taken seriously. And they don't have the resources. You have to have access to resources. And when you don't have that, you really can't compete on the same platform.
Now, let me hold your thoughts for now. We need to go on a very quick break. You're watching Africa Today, and we've been looking at the role of women in nation building and sustainable development across Africa. Welcome back. At a time when some of the world's biggest problems come as the side effect of a system that rarely works for a society in a male-dominated world, women continue to make a difference at various levels as peacemakers and pace-setters. The story of Ellen Johnson Sirleaf has shown that a better continent is possible, and all it takes is an opportunity to correct the leadership mistakes of the past and connect the strings of hope for the future. Well, incidentally, I have the Vice Chairman, Ikorodu LCDA, Folashade Oba. She joins me right now in the studio, as earlier against on phone. Great to have you on the program right now.
Thank you for having me.
So yes, we will be discussing this issue with Dr. Ama, who has been on Skype, you know, with regarding women participation in nation building. You are in politics as a Vice Chairman for a local government in Lagos State. How has it been like for you?
Quite interesting.
Really?
Yeah. I think it's a privilege being given that position and all that, to be able to, you know, serve, you know, the people. but most importantly, it's also has its challenges,
Really?
you know, like being a woman and all that. But I think being a woman makes it better. That's what I want to say, because naturally we're naturals, we're multitasking and all that. And we do have a big heart. And really, when you do give a woman a job to do, most times you can pretty much go to sleep and make sure that you will wake up the job being perfect. Yeah, yeah.
And talking about women in politics, you know, being one of them, in Nigeria, for instance, it hasn't really been a too pleasant, will I say, representation for women, because right from 1999, women representation in the House in the Senate was just about 3, till 2007 we had about 9, 2011 we had about 7, then 2015 we still have about 7. And it's still the same, you know, ratio we have in the House of Reps, and up till now we don't have any governorship, you know, female representative in any of the countries, any of the states in the country right now. Even though you are, you know, representing an LCDA, a local government in, you know, in this part of the country, that's Lagos, would you say that perhaps the woman is given, there will be that opportunity in 2019 where we'll have more women representation in politics, aside from the usual talk of, yes, women are the nurturers, they have the experience, they know how to handle things better than the men. Do you think perhaps we'll be given that opportunity in 2019?
I want to say the numbers definitely, when you look at them like that, it's not encouraging. The numbers don't add up, you know, when you consider that we're supposed to be more, and on election days we're the ones that you can always pretty much count on. But you know, the narratives are changing. There's a big sensitization on us getting involved, you know, like we need to participate.
Getting involved, like how do you...
At whatever level that you are in your community, at work, whatever, make sure you're making a difference. When you call that word politics, it makes it so big, okay? But for me, the meaning is simple. Be relevant. Wherever you are, be the best that you can be, and be proud to represent womanhood, okay? Knowing that there's so many people that are also looking up to you, and you know, if you do better, you're giving them that better enabling platform that they can also flourish from. Now, so much more going to women emerging into political posts, and lately, if you look at the numbers, like I said, it's not been that much higher,
right?
But I think it's going to get a lot better.
You think?
Yeah.
You're so optimistic about that.
I am. We're on our way there.
Okay, Dr. Ama, let's come to you now. Let's look at women. Yes, we're still talking about women. That's our discussion for tonight. Women have been envisaged to be less corrupt than the men, although some research are yet to have their findings to back that claim. But in an essence, there was a time when we had a speaker who was a female, and she was attached to corruption. And also we had a minister, aviation minister, and she was also linked to corruption. Now, some would say a woman was given that opportunity for high positions, and which was misused. So what's the guarantee, for instance, that if a woman gets the opportunity to be perhaps the president, she wouldn't be corrupt?
It's interesting you should ask a question, because has anyone addressed the fact that men are also corrupt, and yet they are the ones who are in charge, and we have such a dominance of men in politics and in other areas? So why would a woman, or why should women be grouped together as one and penalized because 1 or 2 women have not done the duties or performed to the highest level? You know the story. Corruption is everywhere. And no one is criticizing the men for being corrupt. They still continue to dominate.
So if it continues to dominate, what then happens? What's next? How can we change the narrative?
You have to change the narrative by making sure that the women come together and they have a voice, and they use that voice, that they get educated. People don't realize in Nigeria, 71% of the women are not educated. You talked earlier about participation. Participation in politics or in anything, it's about 15% in Nigeria, participation of women in politics, whether they're gathering people to come and vote or they're speaking up. It's only 15%, and yet we're half of the population. So sensitization is very important, but we need to educate women. We need to girls, let's educate the girls so that they become more in tune with what their duties are as citizens, one. Two, we need to encourage women to speak up, to be part of the social fiber, the economic fiber, the political fiber. Very critical. We have to support them. Women need to work together, and we need men to also support women who have the visions or visionaries, let's be even more accurate, visionaries, whether it's in politics, whether it's in education or anything else. But there must be that support. Women don't have the same access to resources. Women don't have the same access to education. And women are not seen as leaders. We say it all the time. Yes, things are improving, but it has not reached the level that it should be for 2018.
It should go further than that, even in 2019, as we progress into the next year, by God's grace. But look at Folashade, if you are to say that we women have a role to play, aside politics, even from our, very small corners, we can, make an impact. Talking about impact, how much do we need to do in terms of gathering enough support from not just the women folk, but the men folk, so they get to understand that the women have a role significant for any nation to grow?
I think it's about being given the opportunity to truly occupy our place, and it's in the trust. Okay, we have some things in the past, like the cultural, the religion and all that, that has kind of limited us to some extent. But I think now it's getting a lot better, but we must occupy our place. The women, right from the home front, when you're raising your girl child, your boy child, make them to be sensitive of the continuous change. Change is one thing that definitely is constant. And definitely you want to let them know that you're preparing them for the road ahead. Okay, back in the days, once you had pretty much basic education, you were told to stop there because you were a woman. So right now, we've got to invest more, okay, in the girl child as well, to where she's been able to compete, like equal opportunity. So because the human capacity development is very important. You can't give what you don't have.
Absolutely.
So we need to work on that, and the character, which is where you talked about the one-offs, because if you look at the numbers, maybe 1, 2, 3, for every 1, 2, 3 that is bad, you're going to see 1,000, 100,000 that's really good, because that's in our DNA, that's in our nature. Women were meant, to be nurturers. To be nurturers,
And in talking about women, having this unique virtue of being nurturers and all of that, there's this belief or this notion that some women don't like to support each other. They like to bring each one another down.
I know. But right now, I think we're learning that doing that to one another is not helping us. And the more we come together, just like how we had this program strengthening, coming together for greater impact and all that. So the numbers is important, and for us to come together, have one voice, discuss issues, learn from one another, be that helping hand. If you're up there, make sure you recreate yourself in somebody else, and at least that you're living,
positive impact.
In the community.
So Dr. Ama, final thoughts now. Where would you say the woman will be in the next 5 or perhaps 2 years from now in Nigeria, and of course in the western part of our continent, for instance?
I think the most important thing is that we must have equal access to education for boys and girls. We must also teach our girls the skills that they need, whether it's within their home, outside their home, in school, getting jobs. They need to get those skills. We need to mentor our girls. We need to teach our girls to work as teams and to collaborate on establishing and growing their future and doing things together. Boys learn this from a very early age. They learn to work together. Yeah. Talk about playing football. They learn those things at a very young age. We don't do that with the girls. We separate the girls and we have them doing housework, which is individual work, unless they have siblings that they're collaborating with. But boys learn really early that if we work together, we can do it better. We can have better ideas. The same thing must be done with girls. And then we have to have resources. It's really important to have equal access to resources. I'm talking about resources from having money, to having equipment, to having the skills. All of that are the resources that are very important. You know, my thing is, if we don't start to appreciate and value our women, starting with the girls, we're in trouble. So we can talk about things getting better, but the reality is the cultural bias, the religious bias still exists. And it's the reason why even those girls who are lucky to get into decent jobs don't get the promotions that they deserve. They promote the boys, they promote the men. But what about those women who are working hard? And why are the women still being subjected to discrimination and gender bias?
And that's what we keep talking about, on our program and even all around us, so that women have a voice. They contribute to any part of the society, and they shouldn't be relegated to the background. But, you know, final thoughts from you now, Folashade Oba. Where would you close this? You know, women, we have been talking, talk, but less of action.
So the time to act is now, okay? The power is in the teamwork, okay? The team spirit. All that pull one another down doesn't work. We need to come together, appreciate one another, help one another grow, okay? And just be the very best of you that you can be. Be
the very best indeed. And on that, I would like to thank you very much, Folashade Oba, for your thoughts on the program. And also like to thank Dr. Ama Ogerima, convener, Live Abundantly Empowerment Initiative. It's a pleasure to have you both on the program. Thanks a lot.
Thank you for having me.
In a never-ending story of survival and resilience, the efforts of women in Africa have seen the continent go from dark times to promising moments, with them at the forefront of conceiving the future, raising hope and thriving against all odds. Now, beyond gender recognition, African leaders must engage more women in the society whose contributions are crucial in creating solutions that will not only sustain nations but serve future generations. And that is our package for tonight, but don't forget to join the conversation as usual on Twitter at TVC News NG, and also follow me for updates around Africa at Esther TVC News. Until the next one again, I am Esther Mafariola, and always remember, Africa can only get better.